Hello, Strat fans. This is Strat-O-logy, the show for and by students of Strat-O-Matic. I'm your host, Jimmy James, and today we'll travel around the diamond to first base as we continue our position-by-position series. So sit back, grab your cards and dice, and let's roll!
Tournament play.
Just a quick touch on the big three tournaments in Strat 365. Both the Players' Championship and the Barnstormers are in the semifinals. That's the top 36 for the Players' Championship and number 10 through 81 for the Barnstormers. 1 through 9 already have made auto bids into the finals. The next exciting date that will be coming upon us will be the sign-ups for the Mystery Tournament. I'm going to call John this week, find out when those signups are going to start, but they're going to be starting very soon, so start playing your warm-up teams in Strat 365. Okay, we'll be back in just a sec.
You're listening to the 365 Sportscast Network, the streaming future of sports talk radio. Listen to us round the clock on the net over 365sportscast.com. On your phone with the 365 Sportscast app, and on your favorite smart speaker by enabling the 365 Sportscast skill and saying, "Play 365 Sports." The views, opinions, and content of the show hosts and their guests appearing are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of 365 Sportscast LLC, its owners and partners, or this network.
Sir Strat of the Round Table.
Today with me is Sir Peter.
Hey there, how are you?
Sir Dave.
Jim, how you doing today?
And Sir Charles.
Looking forward to the show, James.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we are going to continue our series on our positions. We're going to go on around the diamond today to first base. So, I have a couple of quick poll questions for you guys here. First one is first base a big part of your strategy? Sir Charles, what about you? Big part of your strategy? Not.
Not any bigger or less big than any other position is the way I look at it.
Okay. What about you, Sir Dave? Big or little?
I would agree with that. It's about the same as any of the other, maybe a little bit less in some positions.
So what about you, Sir Peter? How big of a part of your strategy is first base?
It's really not that much a big part of my strategy. First baseman is usually the 7th or 8th position that I'll draft during when I'm picking my team.
Yeah, I agree. It's not really a big part of mine either. Okay, let's go back around, and this question is offense versus defense. For you, Peter, which is more important, offense or defense?
Yeah, I know this is kind of a cop-out, but it's somewhere in the middle. Obviously, you want to get power and on base from your first base position, but I will always look at that sorted by defense, because I know a lot of people don't worry about defense when it comes to first baseman, so I feel it gives me a leg up. So it's more of it's 50-50, depends on the set, depends on the type of team I have. But I'm always a defensive forward guy.
Okay. What about you, Sir Dave? Offense or defense?
By far offense. Defense is a bonus. If I get any defense out of my first base, and I'm just looking for a bopper there. But I mean, big time. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
All right, what about you, Sir Charles?
I think that defense is a bonus. I'm always looking for offense for my first base, but like if you're playing a certain season and you're drafting, you're making your own teams. If you're playing in a league like that and there's power in other positions, it's okay to grab like a Rico Brogna and get that one at first base who's got the middle numbers. That's the only time I'm really looking at defense for first base.
Yeah, that's a good point right there. I probably am much more about offense at first base than defense at first base. I think it really comes down to the fact that there's only 2 times on the pitcher's card that it out of the 108 chances or whatever it is that it ever hits that. So I probably go I favor on the offensive side myself. Okay, so this first section I want us to go into, since we talked mostly that we wanted offense, let's talk about the defense. So let's go around. What are the things that you're looking for in a defensive first baseman? Really talking especially about range versus air rating. So what about you, Sir Dave? What do you think? What are you looking for in defense?
In the defense, it's definitely range. I'm not really too worried about the E because I think the E does less damage at first base than at other positions. So if I am going to go for defense, it'll be the range. It'll, again, like if you do get a 1 or 2, that's fine. But I'm not really worried about it. But range would be the number one thing between that and the E rating. That's me.
What about you, Sir Peter?
It's funny. I actually do look at the error rating, the error rating, more so than the range. Now, again, I will typically do my best to draft at the worst a 3 at first base, but the error rating is important. Obviously, like you said earlier, the chances of the first baseman fielding a ball are drastically less than most other infield positions. So, a 3E6 is definitely preferred to a 2E16, just simply because the amount of times, when you weigh out those chances that he's going to get the ball, the error will affect that more so than the range.
What about you, Sir Charles?
Again, it's just gravy. Out of all 8 positions, third base and first base would be the ones that I would punt if given a choice. I mean, of course, I'd like to have 1s and 2s and E6s at every single position on the field, but sometimes there's some give or take involved.
Okay. I would say for me, if I'm looking at the defense, I very much favor a better error rating than a range. What I played mostly for card and dice, I use the advanced defensive rules. And whenever I was always looking at that, it's half of the chances for first baseman are errors. I mean, it's like 1 through 5 and, 15 through 20 is the chance for it to be based on the range. But half of those chances are error ratings. And you take a look at the numbers off of somebody who has something like an error 18 or an error 25 at first base. Dude, it is most of the time, it's like on an error 20 or like on a 9 and an 11 only, something like that. It's not an error. I mean, it's almost always an error if you're at the point of 18 plus. They're error factories. So I think I would rather, now of course, a 1 and a 2 are great. But like you said, I think that's complete gravy is a good term for it. But if I would much rather have somebody who is a 4 E3 than a 2 E25, I think I'm much better off with that really low error rating, just because there's going to be a lot of balls that are going to be outs that would be error chances. And I just think it's so often. You were going to say, Dave?
One of the things that I'm looking at also in range is kind of like a hidden number in the infielder's range. And that's the ones that you don't get the double play, you only get the force play. You get the force play, you get the ground ball C, which is what used to be called, and then the runner advances. And also with the range too, is you're holding runners on all the time. So if you have an asterisk there, that runner, the range goes down one. So that's another factor with the range. And again, with errors, I don't know if I guess there is maybe 2 base errors somewhere, but most of the time you're going to get a 1 base error. You're not going to be throwing it into right field like the other positions can do. Mm-hmm. That's another reason I put range on. I just thought of that one.
Oh yeah, dude. That's why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
That's why we're talking about it. You guys got anything else about defense you want to say there, Sir Peter or Sir Charles?
So obviously, we're talking about with the errors. Most people, again, when you're going to look at first baseman, everybody's going to talk about your power position. I mean, I kind of think that. Obviously there are certain errors where your power position is going to come from first base, and there was literally zero consideration for defense. But in today's, especially some of the newer sets, the '90s, the 2000 sets, and a lot of the 2015s and up, there is a lot of great defense to be had at first base, and again. That emphasis, that old school mentality that all your right fielders and first basemen have to do is show up with their bat. I mean, I am not in a school of thought to give up errors anywhere on the field. So there is a lot of offense that can be had at first base. I will sort when I am looking, especially for a 365 draft, I will sort my first baseman by defense and look for on base percentage. So, and I'm talking about guys like Don Mattingly in the 90s set who, he's not the classic Don Mattingly, but he has high on base, high average, good amount of doubles, not necessarily home run power, but there's a lot of offense to be had without sacrificing defense. And I'm not the guy who likes to sacrifice defense anywhere on the field.
Yeah, I find that if I'm loading a strong defensive team, if I'm playing a season or I have a team that I'm focusing on defense and pitching, that's when I'll have a very low and good fielding first baseman, low ratings, low E ratings. And that's fine. But as Peter was saying, the 70s set, the 60s set, anything earlier than the 80s, you just need a bat at first base. There's just not, your second base and shortstops in general, there's only a couple in each of those sets that can give you some offense.
Yeah, well, in fact, when I did my 60s for the mystery tournament, I did it both times. I like to have defense, actually. Somebody like who did I play this year? I can't think of it. Oh my gosh.
I saw your team. You had an entire all-one infield, I believe.
Yeah, dude, I cannot believe I just can't. I'll keep wanting to say a different person. I keep wanting to say George Scott. It wasn't George Scott. It was Bill White. Dang it. So I have Bill White at first base. So that one defense plus some pop there in that 60 set, because I'm trying to keep the men off the bases in that set. I think that goes very well with what you were saying. And on the Mattingly point, there's so much other offense in that set. So I think what you're saying and what Tim was saying kind of match up very well there, because like you said, you can get an on base and that defense out of Mattingly, and you can get that power from shortstop in that set. So why cut yourself short at first base on that defense if you're truly trying to keep guys off the base paths? So
yeah, okay. Mark Grace is like a Mattingly light.
Oh, I agree. Very much so. Okay, guys, we'll be right back after this.
You're listening to the 365 Sportscast Network, the streaming future of sports talk radio. Listen to us round the clock on the net over 365sportscast.com. On your phone with the 365 Sportscast app, And on your favorite smart speaker by enabling the 365 Sportscast skill and saying, "Play 365 Sports." The views, opinions, and content of the show hosts and their guests appearing are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of 365 Sportscast LLC, its owners and partners, or this network.
Hi, this is David with Michigan and Trumbull Dice Boxes. Michigan and Trumbull Dice Boxes, or MTDB, specializes in handcrafted dice trays and dice towers for any board or tabletop game that utilizes dice. Now, the purpose of MTDB is twofold. Number one, it keeps those pesky dice in the box and on the table and out of the paws of the cat. Number two, it reduces the noise produced by the dice rolls. Foam-lined walls and towers deaden the sound. Each tray and each tower is personalized to the needs of the customer. Catch us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Michigan and Trumbull Dice Boxes. Our website is www.mtdbgaming.com. That's www.mtdbgaming.com. Michigan and Trumbull Dice Boxes. Look us up.
Sir Strat of the Round Table.
We are back. Again, I'm here with Sir Peter, Sir Charles, and Sir Dave, talking about first baseman. Now we're going to talk about the offensive side. What is the most important thing for you? Okay, Sir Charles, what do you think? What's the most important thing you're looking for in offense for your first baseman? You said this is it, right?
One of my trade secrets is that also when I play fantasy sports, fantasy baseball, and Strat-O-Matic, I'm always looking for higher average and higher power, and on base percentage less of that. So I usually kind of go. So I don't usually draft a lot of the players with high OBP, but most of them are power guys. So first base, I definitely look for above average power. So if the average is 25, say for any particular year, I want my first baseman to have 30. And if you're looking for a league leader, like sometimes I'll just draft McGuire just because it's fun to play McGuire. He's not my favorite player. He's not even my favorite prototype, but he's just fun to play. So first base power and batting average is right behind there.
Right. So why average over on base?
I mean, obviously it's good to have both, but because the batting average part of it it's just hits over at bats. So you're going to get extra doubles and triples and homers. You're almost doubling up on the homers too, because the homers will reflect on the average and in the homer category. So it's like, you're talking about walks versus doubles, or singles or a wash versus walk. So it's always that extra base is the way I look at it.
Okay. I could also see is sometimes needing a couple guys in that lineup that are going to be the guys that move them over more than one base. Guys that are going to get the single that moves them over 2 versus the walk that just moves them over 1. I can see that at times. But, you've got to have that man on base, too, before that strategy ever works. So I see, especially having your power hitter be that guy that has the average that can knock guys, use his bat to move people around, even if he himself is not getting on. So
yeah, it's so obvious. If you're in a league with me and you look at the team stats, I'm always in the bottom 20% in walks. But my on-base percentage isn't in the bottom 20% because the average will bring that up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What about you, Sir Dave? What are you looking for hitting for a first baseman?
Power, and power. That's the biggest power position. And there's a lot of players out there that you can get power with. what I'm also looking for to on base is not. I agree with Charles. It's not a big deal to me because one of the things this goes to another strategy, but speed is a big thing for me when I play the game. So on base, if I'm going to get an on base guy, I want a on base guy that can run. A 1-8 or 1-9 just clogs it up. I mean, granted, he's on base more, but he's going to clog up the base pass as well. He's going to go one base to one base to one base. On average, I agree with Charles. You can only get one RBI out of a walk, but on a hit, even if it's a single, you can get 2 or more, and so on and so forth. So these guys I want to drive in. They got to drive in runs. I don't care about the runs scored for them. I want these guys to drive in runs. They're hitting 4th or 5th for me. So that's where I want them to drive in a lot of runs. So it's all about power for me at that position. I have had years where the power didn't work out due to the draft or how my team and so on and so forth. And I'll get like a Dan Dreesen, I think is a very underrated player. A guy like that. And a guy like that can actually run too, a Dan Dreesen, So that's like a bonus too. And he's a decent defensive player as well. But overall, it's going to be power, power, and power. And drive-in runs. That's what I want them to do.
Yeah, definitely. That definitely fits in with what you had said before, is about how much it's going to be a big part of your offense. How about you, Sir Peter?
It's actually funny. I don't even look at the power a lot of times when it comes to first base. I very rarely will go for the McGuire, the Giambis, obviously for the defensive reasons. But my first baseman typically tend to be in the top of the order. I don't. Speed for me doesn't necessarily matter. I'm the I'm the Billy Bean guy. All I care is about him getting on base. And I'm thinking about the guys like Mark Grace. I'm thinking about one of my favorite cards in any Strat-O-Matic set ever is the Terry Francona card in the 1982 set, which we're playing now. He gets on base. It's like a 360 on base. He's a 302 average. He can't run, for worth anything. He is always on base, and I like to get my runs by compiling walks and compiling singles, and then you have your big bopper. You have your your 5th and 6th guy. So my 5th and 6th in the lineup are my power guys. So anyway, first base is my on base and high average guy. My Keith Hernandez is. Those are the type of guys, the Mark Graces. Typically those are my guys who I try to stick in the 2-hole. And actually, even so, I've used Cecil Cooper as a leadoff batter as well, especially when I know he's on that 1980 season, and he's got a 390 on base percentage. He hits a lot of power, but I'll stack my lineup in such a way. I want that first baseman, and I do this also for another reason. Because typically when people are drafting first baseman, guys like Dave, they're drafting power, power, power. So I can build my team around a first baseman that I know is going to be defensively strong, and I know I'm going to get him most of the time. I very rarely don't get my first baseman when it comes to drafting. So that's another reason why. But on base is my first baseman.
Very good. I myself, because it's that low on my list of priorities, I take what I can get there unless it is in certain sets. But I must admit, I love that Cecil Cooper card. I love it. It is like I've hit 360 with it before. I just love that card to death. Good job, guys.
It's funny, Peter. Every first baseman you mentioned is a lefty.
Are all first basemen lefties?
No,
all the good ones.
Like I would think that like Kevin Youkilis would be your ideal first baseman. He's a 1-0. His power, his on base percentage is great, and
if he wasn't a Red Sox,
yeah,
exactly.
Actually, you know what though, Kevin Youkilis, I think he's too overpriced. He usually by the time I get around to my first baseman, I think that's the 2000 set. I've already spent my money, and it usually ends up. My first baseman is 2000 set. It's always Albert Pujols. He's like the guy I break the mold with. He's the guy because it's an impossible card not to do well. You cannot not do well with that card.
Did anyone see the 89 Edgar Martinez card? against lefties, the entire 3 column is walks. The entire 3 column.
Yep.
Very cool.
All right.
So, okie doke. We'll be right back with more after this.
You're listening to the 365 Sportscast Network, the streaming future of sports talk radio. Listen to us round the clock on the net over 365sportscast.com. On your phone with the 365 Sportscast app, and on your favorite smart speaker by enabling the 365 Sportscast skill and saying, "Play 365 Sports." The views, opinions, and content of the show hosts and their guests appearing are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of 365 Sportscast LLC, its owners and partners, or this network.
Sir Strat of the Round Table.
So we are back. The next question I have for you guys is, how often at first base do you guys deploy platoons? Okay, let's start with you, Sir Charles.
If I'm going to platoon, first base is a good place to do it. First base tends to be a very deep position in almost any era. So if you don't get what you want, you can do an about face on your strategy. So platoons for first base can be a good idea. I remember getting a lot of mileage off of who's the guy? Leon Wagner, against right-handers at first base, and he just would club them. And then he can at lefties, but his card is only 4 million if you're playing by millions. So first base is a good platoon position. The one risk that first base has, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what Sir Dave was saying. If you rely on first base for one thing, whether it's power, batting average, and that's what you're relying on, you don't get it at that position, that could screw up your whole strategy. So you may not find it in the other positions. If you kind of use first base a little bit as an afterthought, you can kind of pick and play down, the first baseman numbers 10 through 20 in the set. So platoon is good for first base.
Yeah, I think so too. What about you, Sir Dave? What about platoons at first base?
Yeah,
good
platoons,
or bad?
I've had that a lot of times, and one of the reasons is because of I don't put too much stock in defense. A lot of times when you have platoons, especially the righty that can hit lefties, defense not so good. And not only that, when you have platoons, you want lower priced players, so their defense isn't going to be as good. They can do this basically all hitting. So I do platoon at a decent amount of times at first base. And another thing about first base, a lot of players play first base. You can have outfielders, catchers, third base. There's so many of them out there that you can even stick in there, even though if it's not their 425 or whatever, and it's not their main position or not even close to it, you can still stick them there if you're going to do a platoon. First base is not a big, there's a lot of ways you can do, a lot of opportunity, I guess you could say. So what you were saying, Charles, that's true. I think I probably I'm probably less important on first base as I led on to at the beginning, because I kind of do my strategy. You always do, everyone does it differently, but a lot of it's up the middle. You want first, and then you kind of branch out from there. But the first base, it's kind of comes down to where I'm at on my team. How's my team looking? Do I have any power? And so on and so forth. But I still look for that as being my main power position. But like I said, platoons, yes, I will do them in a heartbeat. Yes.
What about you, Sir Peter?
I'm not a fan of platoons because I think it divides your, or it waters down your effectiveness at each position. I think, if you remember our last show when we talked about drafts, I mentioned that I want to get the most value out of each position. So I feel that platoons a lot of times will water that down. However, a lot of the times, again, your draft doesn't work out and you have to go that way. And first base it is full of those 4 R's, those 6 L's, and so, especially for lower priced players, especially that 90 cents littered with them. You got John Kruk. Well, John Kruk's a little bit of a higher priced guy. Sid Bream's a good example of somebody that you platoon with. Obviously, everybody who plays, 365 knows about the Ron Coomer. The Ron Coomer first base platoon. But I'm not opposed to a platoon. I don't look for it, but I will. If my draft doesn't go well, I'll immediately embrace that in the waiver wire, especially in some of the, obviously the 80s and 90s. The 90s set is really where it's the most prevalent, just because of the availability of, you can compile a really good first baseman between 2 players for about $4 to $5 million. And he's just as good as, some of the guys I mentioned before, Mark Grace and Will Clark, and you can really get the best of both worlds. You do suffer sometimes when it comes to defense when you do a platoon for those reasons. A lot of times you are picking, bottom of the barrel guys. You may have these guys who are very slanted against one arm or the other, and typically those could be injury filled seasons. But platoon, if I do platoon, it will be at first base. But I only do that in case of emergency.
Well, on me, I usually, when I'm very first start looking at a set, I'm going to take a look and see what positions that can platoon, and the very first one I'm going to look at is going to be first base. So if I'm looking, and I'm going to use, if we're playing on 365, I'm going to use the player browser to look at all the 5 lefties and up. I'm going to look at all the 4 righties and up. That's the very first thing I'm going to do, because I think that there's always a lot of guys, like I said, there's certain guys that just can't hit one hand. There's a bunch of guys, you'll have these righty first basemen that can really only hit lefties. I'll tell you, one of my favorite guys, if I'm playing an all-time great set to get, is the 89 Galarraga. Got a 1 defense, and dude, he is just brutal against lefties. He can't hit righties for anything, but he's a pretty cheap player. So if you're playing in a $100 million league, man, having a left-handed a guy that can hit against left-handed at first base, it's only $3 million, man, he's going to literally be on all the time, and you can bring him in as a defensive replacement at the end of the game. So he's got like supreme value there. So it's really probably one of the first things I do is look for that platoon at first base. So you going to say, Peter?
And I will say, I will say that the absolute, one of the best team I've ever had was a 90s mystery team, won 103 games, and my first baseman was Hal Morris and Ron Coomer, and both of them. It was, I think Hal Morris got his 94 card, and Coomer got his 90, I think it was his 97 card combined, and it was only $5 million, I think, combined the prices. That is just as good as a Giambi card. It's just as good as, a Pujols card in the 2000 set. That position absolutely mashed. So again, I don't look for platoons at first, but when you can find the right one, it'll do you wonders.
Well, and it's tough for a mystery league to do that, but I agree that Morris, if you hit right on that Morris, you hit right on the Jeffries card, you hit right on a couple of them, you can literally have one of the best hitters against that hand in the set, and you can get that for an incredibly low price.
Yep.
It's just supreme value there, I think. Okay, and the second thing I wanted to get you guys' opinion on is first baseman by era. The reason I kind of thought of this aspect is I think that there are times when first basemen are super abundant in certain sets, And I think there are times when there is just almost no one. Like, I was looking at the 69 set, the one that just went away. You're talking about, you have McCovey, Powell, Epstein. Then you're down to Allen's defense. After that is Carl Taylor and then Lee May. That's your top 6. You compare that to 2010, Votto, Marneau, Adrian Gonzalez, Euclid, Cabrera, Fielder. Your 13th best is Teixeira. And, dude, Carlos Pena with a 1D and 28 homers is the 18th. There's so much that I just think that's why I just don't put that value in certain sets. Now, I think if you're playing in the 60s, it's extreme value. But I think you can go back before that. And again, you can find a bunch of first basemen if you're playing an earlier set or you're playing all-time greats. You can find some great first basemen from the 20s and 30s. So I think there's like a spot in history where first base changes a bit. And I think that's actually when you have more power at catcher for a little while. And then it comes back around to where you're starting to see, all those great hitters playing first base again, especially through those, some in the late 80s, but the 90s and up to 2010, bang, man, you have a whole bunch of great first basemen. So what do you guys think about the eras? Does it make a difference?
I think it makes a big difference based on other positions and other position availability as well. In like the 60s set, sometimes you've got to give up defense to get your bat in there. And that's, but that's the way the 60s were. You forgot a good card in 1969, which is one of those cards that with low at bats that just becomes a superstar, a Strat superstar, but not a baseball superstar. That Greg Goosen card for 1969 is that's an all-star card, but like who would know that? Like even as a real baseball, Strat fans know it, but do baseball fans know that Greg Goosen's the guy to have and the guy to watch in 1969?
Yeah. Well, I actually didn't bring him up because I doubted very many people would have known who he was for that point. But actually, you may have made that point even better than I did by bringing him up, Sir Charles. What do you think, Sir Peter? What do you think about era to era?
I mean, yes, it absolutely matters. And I think it really depends on, you got to take the position based on era, on saturation of quality. I mean, if you're in the 60 set, we talk about the 60 set for shortstops. If you're a defensive forward guy thinking about shortstops in the 60 set, you got like 4 chances to get a good guy. And I think that's very similar for first baseman in a lot of sets. Obviously in the 60 set, if you're not going to, if you can't get your defensive forward guy, you're probably going to worry about, you're going to move forward and just go with your offense first and go heavy on offense and just make sure he can hit. In the 90 set or in the 80 set, you have a lot more choices, and you can be a little bit more risky when it comes to the draft. You don't necessarily have to, put him higher up on your draft list. And I think that's really where I'm getting with when it comes to certain errors. It really changes your philosophies on how you want to go about getting your first baseman. Just because based on, the way I play, first baseman at certain years, certain sets is at a premium for especially those defensive first basemen. And so, when it comes to the 90 set, again, he's probably my 7th position drafted when it comes to maybe the 60s or, the 60 set, even the 70 set. I'm gonna move up the ladder a little bit and try to get somebody a little bit early, because those middle tier first basemen are hard to come by. Because when it comes to a 70 set, or 60 set, I'm not a big fan of spending $10 million on a first baseman unless it's an Albert Pujols in the 2000 set. So it does matter, obviously, for error, in my opinion. Yes.
What about you, Sir Dave?
Well, I think the first baseman, maybe more than any other position, parallel the overall scoring in the game. you see the 60s, obviously a pitching deck, so you're not going to see too many first base. 90s, 2000s, steroid, all that stuff. I mean, first basemen are all over the place, because of the offense of the game. It's pretty much relative to that. So as far as the old timers, I like the old time better. Jimmy Fox is my all-time favorite old timer. So I want to go to Sudlersville, Maryland. There's a statue of him. That's on my bucket list. Anyway, back to saying, yeah, the old timers are great because they can run too. Those first base, they weren't just logging around at 1 to 8. A lot of them can run, and back then they were probably better. They had to be played both ways better than they do now. It's a more specialized game now. So, but yeah, I would say the old timers I like better. But as far as it does, I think it parallels the offense in each era. First basemen do.
Oh, that's a great, interesting take there, Dave. I hadn't thought of it like that, about how that parallel. I had kind of thought about the parallel to those catchers from the 60s, those benches and those baddies, and you're like, oh man, there's a lot of great hitting there, and not quite as much, at first base in comparison. But I think you really have a point there about how you can kind of follow along with the scoring trends of baseball with the power trends and the hitting trends at first base. That's a really interesting point there, Dave. Does anybody else have anything else they want to say about first baseman before we go?
When it comes to first baseman, they're just, I'm always a fan of telling people who might some hidden gems out there, and I'd be remiss without adding the Jose Offerman card in the 90s mystery set. It's his, and that also goes to show how many players are actually available at first base. He's shortstop first, a very bad shortstop at that, and a very bad second baseman. But he's a first base. He's got a 2E10 at first base, and if you hit the right card, he's your leadoff batter. He's gonna be on base at maybe a 380 clip. He's gonna hit 300 for you. He's gonna steal you 25 bases. Jose Offerman is my go-to first baseman, or my go-to sleeper first baseman in that 90s mystery set. I'd be remiss without giving him all the credit. He's won me quite a few games.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool, guys. Okay, so thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it that you could be in here with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
You're listening to the 365 Sportscast Network, the streaming future of sports talk radio. Listen to us round the clock on the net over 365sportscast.com. On your phone with the 365 Sportscast app, and on your favorite smart speaker by enabling the 365 Sportscast skill and saying, "Play 365 Sports." The views, opinions, and content of the show hosts and their guests appearing are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of 365 Sportscast, LLC, its owners and partners, or this network.
Hi, this is David with Michigan and Trumbull Dice Boxes. Michigan and Trumbull Dice Boxes, or MTDB, specializes in handcrafted dice trays and dice towers for any board or tabletop game that utilizes dice. Now, the purpose of MTDB is twofold. Number one, it keeps those pesky dice in the box and on the table and out of the paws of the cat. Number two, it reduces the noise produced by the dice rolls. Foam-lined walls and towers deaden the sound. Each tray and each tower is personalized to the needs of the customer. Catch us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Michigan and Trumbull Dice Boxes. Our website is www.mtdbgaming.com. That's www.mtdbgaming.com. Michigan and Trumbull Dice Boxes. Look us up.
that is our show for you today. A big thank you for hanging out with us. Thanks to our round table, Sir Peter, Sir Charles, and Sir Dave. Our regular cast of characters, Andrew Burkham, Joaquin Lewis III, Carolyn Snyder, Jimmy Dees, and the music man, Jeff Teczon. All the music you heard today was written and produced by Jeff. Tell us what you think about first base, how you draft it, how you play it. Leave us a message at our toll-free number, 855-888-0096, or find us on social media. We have a Twitter, check out our Facebook, or look up the website, www.strat-o-logy.com. And if you stick around today till the very end, there's a little extra treat. Hey, Jeff, can you play us out?
You got it, Jimmy James.
Find us every Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, on 365 Sportscast radio streaming service. Download the app. Makes it crazy easy to listen. See you next week. Same Strat time, same Strat channel. Did you stick around? Whenever anybody asks me about the show, I always tell them it's a labor of love. That we are just a bunch of guys having a great time together. And this being the holiday season, we wanted to share a little bit of that joy with you guys. So here are a few of the outtakes, kind of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. So, Merry Christmas, guys. Happy holidays. I hope everyone is doing well. And I hope you guys enjoy this. Talk to you next week. And if you're hearing us, cool. We're good.
I hear you.
Okay.
Well, I hear you, but then you go...
I did have a whole bunch of people try to lowball me. Somebody tried to go, oh, Dale Barra for a closer. I'm like, no.
Oh, yeah.
Now I'm going to laugh, man. Because you didn't say anything. Okay.
40 points below his average, but I've got a couple guys batting 40 points above.
Right. And that's the thing with me. Ken Herbeck's hitting 127, a solid 127 though. But he he has a 300 hitting card. So he's like
1 minute.
We ain't stressing.
he had two screens up. Did you have two?
So real quick, what do you think of the 89 set? It looks like a lot of fun.
Is that new?
And I'm having fun with the 82 set.
By the way, are we allowed to eat during this podcast like Timothy is doing right now?
You can do whatever the hell you want.
I'm really hungry.
All right, let's try this. All right, let's try it.
Did you mute us?
Turn the
That is hilarious.
Turn the recording off and start from scratch. Because that's.
No, I'll just edit this first
All
part
right,
out.
wait a minute. Hold on a second.
Applejack.
It's all good. It'll be all right.
You have to change your mindset in this game compared to the other, like the mystery card deck and everything. And you look very professional, by the way, with that big round thing.
Round thing? Oh, this? Oh.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, here we
Let's
go.
do it quick.
It makes it so I don't have to take out as many breaths
All right, let's do this quick before Peter lose Peter again.
Yeah.
Hey, I think I'm good. I think so.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good. We are here on Strat Chat. I am. Let me start that again. We are here on Strat Chat. Today with me is Sir Peter.
Hey there. How are you?
Sir Dave.
Jim, how you doing today?
And Sir Charles.
Looking forward to the show, James.
Hey, thank you. I am. Let me start that again.
Sure.
We both lost each other.
Blah, 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 blah.
Too bad that can't come across sound-wise.
Can you hear me now? Wait, can you hear that?
This is great, man.
The 7-second delay between the two of them.
Yeah, that's
Are you
crazy. It's like you're talking to
what about
yourself. Somebody like, who was I? Who did I play this year? I can't think of it. Oh my gosh.
I saw your team. You had an entire all-one infield, I believe.
Yeah, oh, dude, I cannot believe I just can't. I'll keep wanting to say a different person. I keep wanting to say George Scott. It wasn't George Scott. It was. I'll edit that out.
This is great radio.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's good. That's why I'm good. We're still in the editing it out stage. Because I cannot believe I can't think of this guy's name. Oh my
Where's
gosh!
your producer?
He's the
Can yell
awesome
it.
one. After this, good segment, guys.
Well, actually, they do. Strike that. You can edit that out.
We call time out here.
Yeah, all good.
Oh, who's the guy? Oh.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it that you could be in here with us today. Guys, just say whatever. We've usually been doing this one all. The interesting thing is, it's a 26 team set that we busted into 24 teams. And if you're hearing us,
cool.
We're good.
I hear you.
Okay.
Well, I hear you, but then you go.
You're listening to the 365 Sportscast Network, the streaming future of sports talk radio. Listen to us round the clock on the net over 365sportscast.com. On your phone with the 365 Sportscast app, and on your favorite smart speaker by enabling the 365 Sportscast skill and saying, "Play 365 Sports." The views, opinions, and content of the show hosts and their guests appearing are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of 365 Sportscast LLC, its owners and partners, or this network.
Hi, this is David with Michigan and Trumbull Dice Boxes. Michigan and Trumbull Dice Boxes, or MTDB, specializes in handcrafted dice trays and dice towers for any board or tabletop game that utilizes dice. Now, the purpose of MTDB is twofold. Number one, it keeps those pesky dice in the box and on the table and out of the paws of the cat. Number two, it reduces the noise produced by the dice rolls. Foam-lined walls and towers deaden the sound. Each tray and each tower is personalized to the needs of the customer. Catch us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Michigan and Trumbull Dice Boxes. Our website is www.mtdbgaming.com. That's www.mtdbgaming.com. Michigan and Trumbull Dice Boxes. Look us up.
You're listening to the 365 Sportscast Network, the streaming future of sports talk radio. Listen to us round the clock on the net over 365sportscast.com. On your phone with the 365 Sportscast app, and on your favorite smart speaker by enabling the 365 Sportscast skill and saying, "Play 365 Sports." The views, opinions, and content of the show hosts and their guests appearing are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of 365 Sportscast LLC, its owners and partners, or this network.